So, tropical storms and hurricanes pose a number of dangers. We have to understand that before we kind of move forward. Living here in North Dakota, likelihood that we have ever experienced a tropical storm or hurricane, unless you have relocated from a more tropic sort of climate, probably not. I know personally, I've never. But because of the destructive winds that can cause widespread damage to buildings, trees, and power lines, storm surges for flooding, a rise in sea level caused by these storms can inundate coastal communities with water. So we are going to focus in on hurricanes and tropical storms and all of the dangers that they pose to those whom live within that area. So we are still working with middle school earth science standard 2-2 and 3-2, and we're just diving further into being able to interpret weather data to predict potential meteorological disasters. So let's keep moving. Make sure you have your notes out in front of you. So what are tropical storms versus what are hurricanes? These are things that we have to have a really good understanding of, because one is, yes, obviously a lot less destructive, but can still serve similar sort of purposes. So, tropical storms. A tropical cyclone has a maximum sustained wind of 39 to 73 miles per hour, or about 63 kilometers per hour. These tend to be more often, more frequent, more observable, such as that. But then when we get into hurricanes, these are tropical cyclones, same thing, but they have a maximum sustained wind of 74 miles per hour, which is about 119 kilometers per hour, or greater. They can go much, much higher than just 74 miles per hour. Both start to form over the ocean. Typically with warm water. That's why we see more hitting the Gulf of Mexico, Florida, rather than Maine. And they're fueled by all of that warm moisture in that area. So essentially, those areas are just feeding these tropical storms. How do these tropical storms form? So these are like our ingredients, okay? So they are warm ocean waters at least 80 degrees or 27 degrees Celsius that provides the energy for the storms. Warm, moist air rises and cools, releasing heat and fuels the storm. Because of the Coriolis effect, so which is this weird little, like, if you were to try to throw a ball while you are spinning on a merry-go-round, how it kind of has this curve to it as it goes. It doesn't go just straight. That's the Coriolis effect. So it causes the air to actually rotate and forming this circular pattern. Eventually, with enough fuel and energy, you get this low pressure center developing at the center, which is what we call our eye of the hurricane or eye of the storm, where it's actually really chill because everything else is going on around it. But this then has the ability to almost strengthen the rest of the storm. So as we can tell, like if we just look at these key terms right here, warm, moist air rising and cooling, releasing heat and fueling the storm. This is the exact same way that blizzards start to form. I mean, no, not blizzards, sorry. Reverse that. How thunderstorms start to form, and tornadoes then can also form in a similar pattern. If you notice, the circular pattern of the hurricane is very, very similar to the circular cone-shaped pattern that we see with tornadoes. So they're all interconnected in the fact that they have to start the same way. It's just a matter of where do they start. So there you go with tropical storms. The rest of the time is independent work time. So if you're here, keep following along. If not, you have other plans, sweet, see you later. So We use the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale to categorize our hurricanes. You have probably already heard like such and such a storm is moving in. It is now classified as a Category 1 hurricane, or all the way up to 5. So the categories go from 1 to 5. There is nothing more than a 5. They just kind of encompass everything beyond a certain point to that 5. So the Category 1 is the least intense. It's still intense because, as we know, it's more than 74 miles per hour wind, all the way up to Category 5, which is the most destructive. This provides an indication of potential storm damages. So it allows people within those communities to start to prepare themselves for what might be on its way. Now, let's talk a little bit about what all these winds and categorizations truly mean. So tropical storms, as we just saw, sustained winds between 39 to 73 miles per hour. Everything before 39 miles per hour can be considered technically a tropical depression. We'll talk about that in meteorology. So these are not even hurricane status yet. And 73 miles per hour is really fast. If you remember from our last conversation, you can't even go 73 miles per hour legally on I-29 heading north of Fargo. It's marked as 70. Oh no, I think it went up to 75. So it's about as fast as you can drive legally on I-29 north. That's as fast as these winds get. So what I want you to do next time, roll down your window. Feel how 75 mile per hour winds truly feel against your face. That is technically a Category 1 hurricane wind. Category 1 is 74 to 95 miles per hour, or about 119 to 153 kilometers per hour. This, oddly enough, can cause minimum sort of damage. Hurricane Margot, however you want to pronounce it, making landfall back in September 2023, was a Category 1 hurricane. Not a lot of damage, no deaths, just a little bit of destruction, made people feel uncomfortable. A Category 2 hurricane has sustained winds of 96 to 110 miles per hour. This can cause what is considered extensive damage. Essentially, this is where you can start seeing a lot more downed trees. You can see power outages, some damages to homes, things like that. Hurricane Tammy back in October 25th, 2023 was a Category 2 hurricane. Category 3 hurricanes are identified with winds sustaining over 111 to 129 miles per hour, and this is considered devastating damage. So for an example, Hurricane Idalia making landfall on August 30th, 2024. Nope, that would be 2023. I mistyped. Hasn't been August yet. 2023 flooded out Florida or coastlines of Florida due to major storm surges ranking from 7 to 13 or 12 feet. Not inches, feet. So I'm 5'6". Okay, the smallest storm surge that they experienced, and remember, storm surges are where you have that storm moving in and it goes over whatever barriers are already in place to keep people safe from these sorts of storms. So 7 feet to over twice as many of me. So that is just a Category 3. Category 4 hurricanes sustained winds from 130 miles per hour to 156 miles per hour. And this is where things just kind of get the blanket term catastrophic damage. Hurricane Ian back in September of 2022 killed over 150 people. So kind of a big deal. Category 5 hurricanes. have winds that exceed 157 miles per hour, or 252 kilometers per hour, and can again cause catastrophic damage. It has been a while since we have seen a Category 5 hurricane, but still the damage is unexplainable. Hurricane Dorian, back on September 1st of 2019, caused over $5 billion worth of damage. Yes, only as compared to Ian, who killed 150 people. Dorian only killed 84 people. But we have to understand that, especially due to Hurricane Katrina back in 2005, we have put a lot of time and energy and money into preparing for these sorts of devastating hurricanes. So yes, we go from 100 and some people to only 84 people. Still catastrophic loss no matter how you look at it, but the fact that it caused $5 billion in damage, that is just to essentially replace what was already there, not on top of adding more mitigation systems to those areas that see more intense hurricanes. So just a little bit of perspective, I guess. Some of the dangers of tropical storms and hurricanes. So yes, them themselves are terrifying, but it's essentially just wind and rain. What comes as something that can truly cause catastrophic, like, sort of downfalls are all of the damages and dangers that can come with it. So destructive winds. We're looking at over 154 mile per hour winds with a Category 5, but even so, 74 mile per hour winds at a Category 1, that's still intense. So destructive winds can damage homes, knock down trees, power lines, creating dangerous flying debris. They tell you to stay inside, not so much because it's like, oh, you're going to get knocked over, but more so because who knows what gets picked up. We know here in North Dakota, on a super icky windy day, we got trampolines flying into other people's yards. So imagine something like that coming at you, but with 74 mile per hour winds or greater. So that's a big deal. Storm surges. So we've talked about this with flooding. We're talking about this now. Storm surges, or a rise in sea level along the coast, causing more flooding and devastation onto coastal communities. More so again after the waters recede, the amount of mold and just nastiness in the air causes quite a bit of health concerns as well. So those sorts of damages. Heavy rainfall. So this can lead to flash flooding and landslides. There's a lot of sand, obviously, but if you think of like our soil, we have very clayous soil. Our soil doesn't really move, at least at that slightly deeper level. But sandy sort of soils can move and erode away really, really easily. So heavy rainfall leading to that flooding and landslides causes more and more damage before you even get there. And then finally, tornadoes. Hurricanes can spawn their own little tornadoes. I mean, they're already circulating. They already have everything else that leads to a tornado. So once they make landfall, that is what people more so become concerned of. The like more inland the system moves. Just because the hurricane is no longer a hurricane once it really makes landfall and loses that moisture, it still has everything else a mesocyclone needs. So these tornadoes can spawn, causing additional damages. So, yeah. What's the difference between the two? We've talked a lot about like hurricanes and tropical storms. The biggest thing that it comes down to is the wind speeds. So there are plenty of tropical storms that form all over like the Atlantic, but they're just tropical storms and they might peter out by the time they make actual landfall on any sort of land, island or coastals, things like that. They're considered weaker systems, but can still cause significant damage. They have heavy rains, they still have storm surges, they still have strong winds. You can still have the opportunity for power outages, flooding, and damages to property, but people get far less antsy when they hear a tropical storm is moving in rather than a hurricane. So a hurricane we've talked about with the winds sustaining 74 miles per hour and greater. Much stronger system, which means it can cause more destruction in the end. We have an actual categorization system with the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say, but essentially just to kind of give it categorizations and all this, which then can lead to naming, which I'll talk about here in a second. And then can cause catastrophic damage from powerful winds, tornadoes, rain, storm surges, all that nastiness. Fun little factoid, there's essentially a list of names for hurricanes, and they actually go alphabetical. So there's A through Z, and then I think they just wrap back around. I think it is depending on where the storm originates, determines whether it's going to have a male name or a female name, or it's the time of year. I'll have to look that one up. But I remember like there's a whole list of female names A through Z, whole list of male names A through Z, and either when or where they like originate determines whether that storm is considered female or male. Obviously, what hits our coastal lines, we get a lot more female names. Ida, Katrina, like all that kind of stuff. But literally it's just like each storm that rolls through. And so like for the instance with Hurricane Katrina, there had already been A through J. They just maybe didn't make landfall in the US or cause destruction in the US. But the hurricanes started somewhere and pittered out, but they categorize everything by a name and it goes alphabetically. So, fun little factoid. So those are the differences between hurricanes and tropical storms. So yes, there's those differences, but there's very little difference in how we prepare for them. The National Weather Service always like informs people and tells them like it's better to side on the air of caution, because obviously we see that tropical storms and hurricanes both can cause damages and losses. So what they want you to do is basically follow this, what seems like forever. Let me see, what's my number? It's a big old number, because I'm 15 steps to keep yourself and loved ones safe during and after a tropical storm. Well, actually, before, during, and after a tropical storm. So stay informed, listening to your weather services, have an evacuation plan. Because flooding is such a big deal, they have to prepare, like, okay, if we're told to get out, where are we going? Sort of a thing. Secure your property. Basically, don't leave your stuff out. Like, we just had a gutter go into our neighbor's yard because wind. But basically, bring all of that stuff in because they don't need more excuses for flying debris to impale someone midair. Emergency supplies, similar to like our blizzard kits. Make sure you have like food, water, that kind of stuff. Battery powered devices are huge because you're gonna lose power. It's almost inevitable. Stay indoors as much as possible unless evacuation has been stated. have emergency contacts in line, turn off all utilities. Like, if you have access to your water, like I know in the city of West Fargo, we had a little like turn crank in our like basement where we could turn off our water to our house. So turning off utilities in that way, staying hydrated, because you never know. As soon as the storm surges come in, your water is essentially undrinkable. So staying hydrated in order to not get sick. Plus hurricane season happens during the warmer months too. Avoid flooded areas, keep your pets safe, prepare for aftermath. There's going to be some sort of destruction. Check on your neighbors, and then follow instructions. Following instructions is probably the most important thing, because when you're in the midst of it, you are going to be counting on the experts in getting you out and getting you out safely. So those are the 15 steps for preparing for a tropical storm. Now, if that wasn't enough, preparing for a hurricane is similar to a tropical storm, but making sure that things are just a little bit more prepared, because obviously hurricanes can cause far more destruction. So we're looking at 16 steps in preparing yourself and others for a hurricane. And basically everything stays the same until they follow instructions and stay alert. So following instructions, again, listening for emergency services at all times. What essentially this means is that you are listening to the experts to know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it safely. And this is because we don't want similar sorts of things to when other hurricanes have made landfall and finally things start kind of like settling down, but places are still majorly flooded. Have you seen the news videos of people sitting on the roofs of their homes? Things like that. They don't want to risk first responders' lives to save yours, essentially. And then finally, stay alert, because hurricanes have the same formation as mesocyclones do on land. Making sure you're vigilant for tornadoes, and sometimes they kind of sort of just pop up out of nowhere. But hopefully by taking all of these steps for both a tropical storm and a hurricane, you can keep yourself from major destruction, but more so keep yourself and family safe. So this last slide is, there is a video. If it does not play in here, which is 100% possible, I've linked it in the Schoology folder. But essentially, this woman has put her entire life into her home and making it as hurricane resistant as possible. There are certain things about homes that are built within hurricane prone areas that we don't do to our homes, obviously. Like for instance, our doors swing in to our homes. That way, like when there's a blizzard, we can still hopefully get out by dinging ourselves out of our homes, things like that. All of their doors swing out. And that is so that when floodwaters hit it or wind hits it at that velocity, they don't open up or come into the home. So that their windows are actually much stronger than ours. Obviously you can get the stronger ones, but they cost a pretty penny. But these just naturally, like what builders put in right away, is just a more tempered glass, so that hopefully, again, storm surges and things like that don't take them out. My dad lived in Florida for a while, and on each of the four corners of his windows and exterior doors and things like that, there were these massive bolts that stuck out, and that was essentially because they had pre-cut plywood to put over these and then wing nutted in. So they prepare their homes for disaster. They put on those precautions, and Miss Kathy Anderson in this video does even more than that. So it's interesting to hear her perspective on why she's put her entire life into her home like this and the sorts of things that she had to do. So I'm going to leave you with that. Watch this video because there is a question about it in your notes, and we will chat soon. There is a check-in, so make sure you take your time with that. Awesome. If you have any questions, let us know. Thank you.